Brilliant. Okay, thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm actually going to just turn this, stop presenting so you can see my face. Right, can everyone see me on the main screen? No, okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us here. A very warm welcome to you. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Andrea Jankrofer. I'm a director and the head of Africa for Women in Marketing organisation. So Women in Marketing is a global network of professionals created to educate, inspire, connect and recognise women in the marketing, advertising and communications fields. So WiM started around 2004 in the UK, originally as part of the Chartered Institute of Marketing. And then we moved away from the Chartered Institute and became a social enterprise in the UK. And then in 2018, I launched the Women in Marketing Network in South Africa at the Luthuli in Durban. Just want to say thank you for you guys for joining, and also thanks to our partners who without which these conversations would be possible. So huge thank you to Africa, who we'll hear more about a bit later on when our moderator Charles introduces herself. And also thank you to Kantar, our research partner, and also thank you to Stereotype Alliance. So I'm just going to tell you a bit about Stereotype Alliance. WiM Africa is an ally member of the Stereotype Alliance South Africa chapter. So convened by UN Women, the Stereotype Alliance is an initiative that seeks to eradicate harmful gender-based stereotypes in all media and advertising content. So they bring together partners and seeks to collectively use the advertising industry as a force for good to drive positive change all over the world. And members who range from Unilever to IPG to Safaricom to many other brands, they work towards creating a world without stereotypes, empowering women in all their diversity, whether that be related to race, class, age, ability, ethnicity, religion, sexual language, or education, and addressing harmful masculinities to help create a gender equal world. So now on to Real Talk. So the Real Talk series has been really interesting. It's been a bit of a passion project for mine. The idea around the Real Talk series came about during the lockdown. So myself and some other senior executives in marketing women got together and were talking about some of the stresses over the pandemic that women in particular were facing. And the conversations were around the impact of the pandemic, with many women experiencing overwhelm and frustration as a result of the additional pressures and expectations put on them during lockdown. Difficulties many women with care responsibilities and or who work flexibly have in accessing career enhancing opportunities. And also the struggle women sometimes have in being open in the workplace and in sharing with colleagues the daily challenges that they face. So lots of different elements here. And much of what women were experiencing at the time has been evidenced in global media research reports, including the UN Women Gender Equality in the Wake of COVID-19 reports. So this Real Talk series is the second in the series. The first one was in March on International Women's Day, and that focused around women in tech marketing. So it spoke to senior executives from Google and two other organizations, just trying to understand the challenges that they're facing in a predominantly male-dominated industry. So today, our Real Talk series will focus on female founders, and we've got three fantastic women who are going to share with us their journeys into entrepreneurship, understanding some of the specific challenges that they may have faced starting and scaling their businesses sometimes in environments not wired for their success. So before I introduce the moderator, I'd just like to remind everyone I'm recording this session, just to let you know. And also, if you have any questions, please do put them into the chat and we will get to them towards the end of the discussion. So I'm now going to introduce Charles. So actually, I'm going to start by introducing our panelists. So we've got three amazing women joining the call today, and I'm just going to get the details. So we have Catherine Young, who is the founder of Thinkroom and managing partner of Grindstone Ventures. We've got Mamela Luthuli, founder and CEO of Take Note IT, and we've got Moki Makura, Executive Director of Africa No Filter. Now, later on, they are going to introduce themselves and their organization, so you'll get a better sense of who they are and what they do and the impact that their organization is having on the continent. But I will now introduce our amazing moderator, Charles Lee Matthews, CEO and publisher of WiM AFRICA. She'll be moderating and guiding the discussion. A former investigative journalist, advertising agency owner and growth hacker, Matthews founded and exited Ideas Engineers and worked to drive global scale with pioneering teams at Naspers and Tutuka.com. A part of Daily Maverick's startup team, Matthews has been published in Guardian and Rolling Stone magazine and has done investigations for Amabungani, an investigative journalism organization focusing primarily on exposing political corruption in South Africa and neighboring countries, and also the Center of Public Integrity in Washington, DC. So Charles, I'll hand over to you now, who is going to guide this really insightful conversation. Thank you. Oh, you're on mute, Charles. Let me see if I can.
Okay, I had to do that. I had to start like that. Thank you so much, Andrea. And I am surrounded by formidable women today. And I hope that in the conversation we have, we can find solutions, we can tell stories. And yeah, I'd like to kick off by introducing you to Mamela Luthuli. Mamela Luthuli is a phenomenal female founder who is single-handedly curbing cable theft in Africa. Now, I don't know if you know about the problem of cable theft in Africa. It's a multi-million rand or multi-million dollar problem in South Africa alone. It costs our economy about a couple of billion, about 2 billion. And so I would like to start off with Mamela, and I'd like to ask Mamela, who are you? Who is Mamela Luthuli? And how did you create such a disruptive business? And what were the difficulties that you as a female founder faced doing this? Over to you, Mamela.
Thank you so much, Charles. It's such an honor and a privilege to be part of this conversation. So my name is Mamela Luthuli. I'm the founder and CEO of Take Note IT. I think by my nature, I love challenges and I also like to be a disruptor. As long as I can remember, I always like to venture into enchanted areas. So that's how I ended up in the cable theft. I started my career in the public sector, and I immediately discovered that I'm very passionate about technology. And in those days, the Internet of Things the internet wasn't there, and the evolution really intrigued me and really made me to want to learn more and to face the challenge of being in the boardroom and being the only female. You know, it was the quest within me to want to change the narrative of saying women can be on the STEM space and are more than capable. So that's my passion, is to change the narrative of that in any space, women are more than capable to do the work and to perform. And that's who I am in a nutshell. I've always been an entrepreneur. I started my first venture when I was 14 years of age. So I was quite privileged to discover myself and knowing that I'm an entrepreneur, and also to discover the passion for technology at an early age. So I've been in business for the past 14 years. I am the founder and CEO of TakeNote IT. We specialize in cybersecurity and IoT. So like I said, that probably like the challenge, because I started IT at the end as a consultant and doing your normal end-to-end IT. But I identified the niche market in the IT security and realized that both physical and digital, there's a huge danger, and we're really not prepared. We talk digital strategy, but we're not really cognizant of the security aspect of it. So, and in my research, I discovered that within the IoT space, there's this huge challenge that our country is facing, which is vandalism and cable theft. You know, it's a big challenge, and as you all know, that we're struggling with load shedding. And what is not said enough is that the biggest contributor is the cable theft and the vandalism of the infrastructure. So that to me, I saw it not as a problem, but as a challenge to solve. Like you mentioned earlier on, that we must really be solution driven versus being reactive when the challenges are coming up. So our business strategy is built around being proactive, and where we're looking on saying, how do we prevent the vandalism and the theft of the cables before it happens? So we've deployed different technologies and integrated them into one platform, and saving the customers huge monies that they are spending on physical security, and over and above that, the reputational damage that they have to face and the inconvenience that both the customers and the customer tend to face. So for me, that's the driving force of saying, how do I provide solutions to existing problems and not just dump technology? You know, and I'm also a firm believer of upskilling. One thing we tend to miss, we're sitting with a situation of unemployment in our country, but we're talking fourth industrial revolution, and not be aggressive in first starting with the foundation of training our people and reskill them and upskill them in the 4IR space. For me, I've identified that with cybersecurity, if I were to focus on upskilling and reskilling young people and direct them towards those skill sets, at least I'm solving some problem. I mean, when the World Economic Forum was mentioning that in 2020, there's a skills shortage, there's a scarce skills shortage of about 3.5 million. I'm sure that number has changed now, where they need the skilled resources within the cybersecurity space. And immediately within TakeNote, we formed the Cyber Excellence Academy, where we upskill and reskill young people. And it's one of my jewel projects that I'm proud to be associated with. And we've created more than 30 jobs in the midst of COVID. Thank you, Charles. I think I've said it enough.
Thanks so much, Mamela. I think since I've been writing and with the journey on Inc. Africa, what I see again and again with founders in Africa, and particularly female founders, is that they are problem solvers. Yeah. And I'm going to now ask another problem solver, Catherine Young, who is part of Knife Capital, but also with Grindstone Ventures, which is a new female-led fund. Catherine is also involved in Grindstone Accelerator, which is a growth engineer and an incubator that kind of pushes businesses forward. And I'd like to ask you, Catherine, if you can tell us a bit more about yourself. But Catherine, you've had exposure to many, many female founders, yeah. And perhaps you can tell us a bit more about the challenges that female founders face in Africa when they are solving problems and creating new companies.
Fantastic. Thank you, Charles. It really is awesome to be on this call. And I was just remarking just before we started the call to the organizer, to Andrea, to say it was so lovely to get onto a panel where it was so well prepared, because I could actually go and consider some of the questions. And this first question that you're asking now, Charles, it struck me in the heart when I prepared, because I took the question for what it was. Who am I? And we never stop and ask ourselves that question, you know, as a female founder, who am I? I very often come onto the panel representing the female founders in our programs, but I never come as a female founder. So that was the first thing that struck me about, oh my goodness, you know, what is that and who am I? So I'm a woman, I'm married, I have the opportunity to work with the most incredible females and males in my world. I come from Mamela, we share a 14-year-old story in common. I started working at the age of 14. I come from in a casual way to help my mom. I come from a single-parent household and was in a single-parent household probably until I was 11 or so. But so I was raised by a strong woman, and that was another answer that came. So who am I? I'm the daughter of a strong woman. That's something that came up for me in preparing for this. And what we do, so I was in corporate for probably the first 20 years of my career, working really literally from a receiving cage in a supermarket, sorting out bad food all the way through, and just through hard work and God's grace, you know, got through the ranks, but learned so many things, and just learned that in the beginning when I was younger, it was difficult because I tried to be whoever they needed me to be to get what I needed to get. And as I got older, I just realized I don't have the energy for that anymore. And I just am showing up as who I am, and then often get faced with this imposter syndrome of, oh my goodness, am I good enough in this world that's greater than I could ever imagine to want to be, you know? And as I said, so for those on the call who are have the privilege of being younger than what I am, I'm almost 50, please enjoy that. But as you get older, you will start feeling that you can settle, and if you're blessed enough to feel that earlier, that's great. Then after corporate, had the opportunity to start my own business called Thinkroom. It's a pure consulting business, and we just worked with corporates across the continent, building entrepreneurs, like small businesses, because I realized, very similar to what Mamela was saying, is how can I give back in a way that we can make a difference, even if it's, I always say this, we're making a difference one entrepreneur at a time, And that's how it started. So I started Thinkroom Consulting. At that stage, the challenges were to leave a corporate job, the dependence on a salary that you bring into the home. We all know that, and starting from scratch and having to start selling a new business, that was difficult. Those were difficult years. I remember coming home to my husband, talking to him, saying, Andrea, I've got good news and bad news. The good news is I've got the guts to start my own business. The bad news is I don't think I'm going to bring in money for the first 6 months. Please bear with me. And we had a glass of wine and laughed about it. And it was 6 months, but be that as it may, that's the reality. And then a couple of years on, had the privilege of doing a deal and buying 50% of Grindstone from a partner who co-owned it with Knife Capital at the time. I didn't have the money. God knows my heart. I didn't have the money, but I told the guy who I was negotiating with, I'll find the money and I'll pay you off in installments. And he settled. He actually settled for the deal and bought half of Grindstone at the time. And then we started the fund. And I want to just close with this. The founders, the female and the male founders that we work with, it's a very interesting thing, and that's why I selected Knife Capital as partners too. I don't find I have to first fight the fact that I'm a woman with them and then fight the fact of business, it feels like I can just jump in there and fight, you know, with them. And that's great. And I think the experiences that we'll talk about later for the other startups, as we found, it's not about one being better than the other, it's just about the equality. Thank you, Charles.
Thanks so much, Catherine. And I think kind of this feeling of imposter syndrome, you know, when you feel it, you feel like you could be the only person in the world who kind of struggles with this. But when you start to speak to more and more founders and female founders, you find that it is quite pervasive, you know, that in fact, most of us, you know, do have this kind of issue with imposter syndrome, or that we question ourselves. And I think it's quite natural because we live and work in a system that questions us so much, and that female founders do get, you know, if you look at kind of the statistics, the questions that female founders get from VCs as opposed to the questions that males get from VCs, we see that there is that kind of bigotry as well. Yeah, I'd like to move on to someone that I've known for quite some time. Moki Makura. Now, Moki is at once a serial entrepreneur and has written books about entrepreneurs, most notably Africa's Greatest Entrepreneurs and South Africa's Greatest Entrepreneurs. And Moki has a podcast about females and female founders. Currently, Moki Makura is working with Africa No Filter, where she leads a huge program to turn around the perceptions of Africa that people have, both internally in Africa, the way we tell our story to the world, as well as the way people think about Africa externally or offshore. And it appears to me that, you know, females themselves are in narratives, and we're telling stories about ourselves. Moki, I would love to hear from you who you are and what you do, and what advice would you have for female founders about turning this narrative around, which is something that you're doing in your own work.
Yeah, thank you, Charlie. Yeah, I'm gonna say try and condense my more than 50 years of life into a couple of minutes. But I think essentially I am an entrepreneur and I'm a storyteller. So if you look at my background, I've started businesses in fashion, in food, in PR, and then in publishing. And then I moved more into the media space. And actually I left the publishing business because I gave myself the advice I normally give to entrepreneurs. If your business can't afford you, get a job until it can. Because a lot of the businesses I did, I was running, I had a day job, and I do this in the evening, I do this on the side, because, you know, you can compromise your lifestyle, but I don't like to. But anyway, so yeah, I'm a storyteller right now. So I run a company or an organization, we're a not-for-profit called Africa No Filter, and we are trying to shift the harmful and stereotypical narratives that exist about Africa, but equally importantly within Africa. So what you as a South African believe about me as a Nigerian is the same thing that a European believes. We don't know any better because we don't have access to stories other than, you know, global stories on sort of, I guess, international media platforms. So that's essentially what I do now. And we've got a big budget. We've got a big budget to do that. I've got some of the most influential US and UK institutions supporting me. And that's one of the things I actually said earlier on, that it's easier to raise donor funding for charitable work in Africa than it is to raise money to do business in Africa. Again, it goes to the perception that Africa needs help. Africa's broken. Africa's dependent. So they'll give you money to fix the continent because that's the comfort zone. But you want to do business, it's a lot tougher. And absolutely, it's a lot tougher being a woman. And the one thing I will say, just to your question, Charlie, about what advice would I give? And just to take one step back, the book I wrote called Africa's Greatest Entrepreneurs, I had 16 men in there. And this was back in 2008. I would never have written a book with only men. But the problem was women didn't step forward. Women did not step forward because they did not see themselves as entrepreneurs. And it was like, oh, no, I'm just doing the work. I just want to stay in the background. To this day, every time I ask a woman to do something, I would say 8 times out of 10, they always ask, must I, should I, don't really want to, you have to do some convincing. When I ask a man, it's like, when do you want me there? How long do I need to be on there? You know, and that thing. So my advice to women is be brave, because really often it is us that are standing in our own way. And to this point about imposter syndrome, I did a whole show about imposter syndrome, and it's probably the most feedback I ever got. I've had it. So many women have had it, and it really, you just have to step over it. It's about being brave and knowing that you're here, you're there, and you just need to do it. So my favorite slogan is Nike's "Just Do It." I'll hand back to you, Charlie.
Thanks so much. And I love that slogan, just do it, because, you know, we can get overthinking. And I think kind of like this whole analysis paralysis, you know, and I think we do need to just do it and step up and step forward. Mamela, I'd like to come back to you, and I'd like to speak to you about kind of what is one of the biggest challenges that you've had as a female founder, and how did you overcome that?
Thank you so much, Charlie. I think just to allude to what Moki has just said, I think for me, my biggest challenge was myself. It was the self-sabotage. You know, everything I'll do, I'll come back and if I made a mistake, I'll really beat myself hard and sit on it and not get over it and tomorrow and just move on. One typical example I've been doing for many years was to believe that I'm introverted. I don't like to be the center of attention. I just want to keep a low profile and be in my corner and do my thing. That's how I was showing up to the world. And how do you have ambitions of growing a big organization if you're sitting in the corner? You know, it took another woman, Busi, when I was doing, I went into one of the enterprise development programs, and I was telling her what I do. And I'll never forget her face. She was like, wow, you're doing so much work, yet no one knows about you. Are you on social media? No, I don't want to. I don't want to be wasting my time on social. I don't want to be known. I don't want to come across as bragging on myself, putting myself on people's faces. Those were my words. But who must tell my story? Who must change the narrative? It's me. You know, I've done that for a very long time. It took me, after having been in business for so long, only 2 years ago that I started to open myself up, to understand that I need to show up, I need to be known, I need to step out of my comfort zone. I mean, says who that I mustn't be the center of attention for what? For who? You know, because it's all these things that I've put in my head, and I was believing that I'm shy, I'm introverted, I prefer to sit quietly and not be bragging. So for me, that's the first challenge, and that I created myself. So self-sabotage, and just be kind to yourself and be gentle, that if you make a mistake, it's okay. You know, life moves on. It happened yesterday. Today is today, you know, and so that was my biggest challenge I faced. And also the perception that I had, not necessarily a perception, maybe there's some element of truth into that patriarchy does exist. I mean, women are marginalized, no doubt about that, but the numbers, the stats is speaking for itself. However, who will change that? You know, men are men. They've got a masculine energy that they must push for themselves and fend for themselves. If I don't stand up and change that narrative as a female and do something impactful, you know, and know that I've contributed my part. You know, I'm raising daughters, and I was also raised by a very strong woman. And my mother never really mulled too much on whether it's a male or female. She will go in and own the stage and just do what she has to do. And she's been successful. And all she was driven by was passion and compassion. It was really about doing her best on anything she does and cares about people. And I realized that if for me, I can be part of the statistics of the women that will be remembered to have contributed something in changing the patriarchy system, because it's there, no doubt about it. So that's for me one lesson I've learned. What was your second question, Charlie? Sorry.
You're on mute.
You're on mute. You are on mute.
the challenge you had and how you overcame that challenge. So,
Absolutely, yes.
what did you do? Kind of these feelings of insecurity, these feelings of kind of that you need to hide away, that you mustn't kind of step up in that. How did you change that within yourself?
Absolutely.
What
No,
did you
thank you.
do?
Thank you so much for that, Charlie. So what I did, for me, you know, you need to work on yourself. So again, the reflection was on me. It was the turning point of coming across the spiritual path, where I really did an inner engineering on myself and trained, worked hard, took myself out of the comfort zone, and went for each and every program that is, be it it's a mentoring program, be it it's a spiritual program, anything that can make you to be centered and be grounded on something. And for me, that has been the turning point, because it took away the insecurities. So I do a spiritual yoga and breathing postures, and that has really grounded me. And now I'm centered on who I am, you know, and not trying to be anybody else and always comparing myself with males or females. I just see human beings. You know, I can't wait for the day where, hopefully, I've got hopes for the future that the next generation will be able to sit and embrace both energies, both the feminine and the masculine. And we understand that we're all human beings that are here for a particular purpose, and we have to work together. So how I changed that, it started with me. I worked on myself. I changed the narrative I did for myself, and showed up. And even if I'm getting a negative feedback, I mustn't take personal. I mustn't take it personal. I must understand that this is not about me. It's about the process and what needs to be done. And even if I'm being offended, because at some point I was very sensitive in the boardroom, that if a male is saying something, I'm ready to fight. And I realize now that actually, let me always take a deep breath and think through things. I don't have to respond immediately in the meeting. And most of the time I'll realize that this is not about me. It's about the work that needs to be done. If I misunderstood, or I did something incorrectly, it's not about me. Let me humble myself and put aside the stereotypes of gender and do the right thing and work 10 times harder. You know, one thing we don't do as female is we need to show up, like Moki has said, and Catherine alluded to that you need to show up and do your part and stop the self-sabotage. So that's what I did. Those are the solutions I did for myself. And most of all, work 10 times harder. You must understand that the expectations are way too high for you. So you can't afford to fail, you know, and just have that drive and passion. So that's me in a nutshell, and how I'm showing up. Thanks.
I really love what you are saying, Mamela, because you're talking about reflection, you're talking about pausing and taking a step back and kind of looking at yourself. You know, you're talking about a yoga, which is kind of like a ritual, or coming back to yourself again and again and again. Catherine, what kind of practices do you have? Kind of know thyself, know thy business. What do you do, you know, as a practice? And then working with female founders, do you find that there is a requirement for female founders to focus on the self as well as the business?
Yeah. Thank you, Charles. So I'll share a couple of my practices. I have a very similar routine in terms of yoga and in terms of meditation. So I have a very structured, because I can't control my day, but I know I can control the first 3 hours of it in the morning. I get up very early. I'm a very, very early riser. I always have this thing about, in the summer it's difficult, but I always want to be up before the sun is, because I want to see her come up and celebrate with her. I always do that. And when it's cloudy, I still acknowledge it. So I have a very specific practice in the morning. It's my me time, and I really center for the day. When I was younger, it used to be all about work. Now it's really been able to shift and move, and it's all about centering me first for the day ahead. And I've become very adamant about that time as being me time. It doesn't matter where I am, anywhere in the world, when I travel or what it is. The first couple of hours are mine. So I also, there are a couple of things I've also learned through the years, and I want to share that with those on the call who may not know this. As females, many of us have the habit of apologizing before asking something. I'm sorry to ask, but sorry to disturb, however. And I have literally over the years got into the habit and the practice of not using the word sorry, except if I'm really sorry about something from the heart, so I no longer make excuses for asking something. I ask it respectfully, I ask it quietly, or if it needs to be less than quiet, I do say, but always respectfully. So that's another very practical thing of having removed the word sorry out of my vocabulary as a normal rhetoric. Another very practical thing, if I'm in a boardroom and there's a lot of masculine energy, and very often the masculine energy doesn't only have to come from the males, as Mamela said, but it's a heavy masculine energy. I would very often come into the room, and actually I'm going to do that now. I'll just sit back on my chair, straight up, and do my breathing, slow it down, right? Nobody knows it, nobody sees it, but I feel it from my gut, and I breathe slowly. And what happens, and I'm going to do that, so let me do that. Your voice naturally lowers a little bit. It brings a sense of calm, and it brings a different energy to the discussion. And the last practice, I want to just add a little bit to what Mamela said, is exactly that. Not every action needs a reaction. And very often it's good, and sometimes I will actually just first listen and then respond if I have to, in that capacity if I have to. So those are some of the practices that I've had, that I've learned for myself that really work. Oh, and the last thing I really want to share, because this is something that we battle with as women, that we shouldn't. And then I'm going to go to your second question, Charles. Even the females that I work with in my very close environment have this concern that they must speak about the inequality. So they don't want to be seen as showing up as a female who's fighting for the females. But it's not about that. It's not about that. It's fighting about equality in anything. It's just fighting any potential oppression. And very often I will change the rhetoric to say, but I'm not on this panel today. Please God, in 5 or 10 years' time, we have a panel where it's not just about talking about how few females come up, that we have come up and we're equal because we are. But it's about being okay with having, if not us, then who, to have this rhetoric until we get it done. So the female, and then the second question on the female founders that we work with, what we find very often in the mentoring and the coaching sessions, in fact, we do spend more time on the softer side of things. In fact, not because we don't want to spend the same time with the male founders, but just because you've first got to unlock many of the males to get them to talk about emotions and how they're feeling and how they're showing up for their businesses. But very often with the female founders, we have to discuss things like, I'm not good enough, or I am the sole breadwinner of my household, and if this business is not going to work, I don't have the luxury, what do I do? Things like that. We very often have to, how you show up and present, work in a different way with the female founders than we do with the males. And it's incumbent on all of us, especially all of us who do the work in this ecosystem, to continue to do the work, male or female. It's for all of us to get the work done. But I don't believe that we know that it's not a quick fix, but one at a time will get us there, you know?
Thanks so much, Catherine. And asking for help. I think there's huge virtue in asking for help. And I think of the story of Zanelli Makomi, who runs a company called Welo Health. And when she was building out her business in the initial stages, she had a huge problem in terms of addressing her first big customer. Yeah. And she reached out for help, and she reached out to someone by the name of Kurt van Sale at Knight Capital for help. And he's a VC. A VC is very much in demand. And what's amazing is that she got the help that she needed. And what happens if we do show up? What happens if we do ask for help? Moki, I'd like to pass this over to you and to ask kind of, first tell me about some of the issues that you've had and the blockers that you've had, and you know, what has happened when you've showed up, what has happened when you've asked for help. Yeah.
Yeah, I think when I show up in my full person, I get that label, angry Black woman, right? Which is really detrimental. You know, if you know what you want, you're confident, you speak truth to power, you're labeled as, you know, difficult to work with, you know, aggressive. These are all the monikers that women get that our male counterparts don't get. And that's a big issue. So, you know, I feel sometimes I didn't work with her. She was a good friend of mine who told me she worked at a bank and it was a very male patriarchal system there. And she was told that she came across as too aggressive. Because over the years, she actually kept swallowing. She said she became smaller. Like she'd go into meetings and just because she was trying to do this exercise and be less than who she was, she became smaller. It took her a number of years to step back into herself. And, you know, for me right now, I think I'm right in myself. I used to give the example of, you know, the last role I had, I was wearing a size 10 when I'm actually a size 12, whereas I couldn't really stretch out. Whereas right now I'm in a 14, I can do whatever. I'm in my space. I'm in where I should be. And that's the role I have now, because I think my natural self is I'm a natural leader. Call me bossy or, you know, whatever it is you want. I'm a natural leader. And there are things I have to temper as a result of that, because I think very fast. I move very quickly. I'm very entrepreneurial, want to get things done. And I realize not everybody, unfortunately, is like me. So one of the things I've done, rather than try and temper myself, I've actually created these other things that have taken some of my energy. The podcast, I'm writing a book, I'm doing a television set, I'm doing all of these other things instead of channeling everything into my business, because I'd kill everybody. They'd die from exhaustion if I went. So rather than change me, I'm doing other things because I have a lot of creative energy. So that's how I deal with it. But the one thing that I have learned, you know, I don't even know if you asked me this question, but it's just that everybody's been saying what they do. The one thing that has really changed the way I approach, you know, meetings or panel discussions, even, I ask myself, why am I at the table? Why am I there? And once I'm clear about why I'm there, you know, there's nothing that can stop me. Usually that inner confidence comes from when somebody's been asked to do something, you're not really sure why, so you don't really know what you should be talking about. I'm clear. Right now, I talk about storytelling, I talk about narrative. I know everything. There is nothing you can ask me about storytelling and narrative that I don't know. So that knowledge gives me the confidence to be at the table. And that's what I would ask women to do. If you're not sure why you're at the table, figure out why it is. If you're the lawyer, you're there to discuss legal things. If you are the founder of that organization, you are there to talk about the startup and your challenges and your business. Know your business intricately. Know why you're at the table, because it literally was the game changer for me. I knew why I was at the table, and I knew therefore what I had to say. And if I wasn't prepared, I knew exactly what to go and research to make myself feel confident and be at that table. So I'll stop there.
So again, this theme is coming up of know yourself, know your value, know your business. I'd like to start talking about solutions, kind of where we can find solutions and support. But before I do, just remember, if you're in the audience, you can ask questions. Please do ask questions because we are here to answer them for the last 15 minutes. So if you do have questions, please go ahead and ask them. Mamela, where have you found support, and where would you urge women and female founders to go to get support? Where can we find support? Ooh.
Thank you, Chadi. You mean any kind of support or business support?
Well, if you look at the support that founders need, we need support in networks, we need support in funding, we need support in knowledge. But speaking to all the women today, it seems like there is also a requirement for almost like a support for us to grow, to grow internally and to have the strength to step up and yeah.
No, thank you so much, Charlie, for that. And just to disclose that I'm also the beneficiary of Grindstone. So that was my support as well. The enterprise development programs are really very helpful. When I started the business and I thought I knew it all, I never really bothered because I thought they were just ticking the boxes. But now that I've taken my time, because it's a two-way stream, enterprise development programs, they work and they're quite helpful for women because they cater for different needs. Like I'm mentioning that I'm part of the Grindstone family, and I was quite privileged to have been the best performer in Johannesburg and won some prize with money. And now I know that if I'm looking for funding, Knife Capital is my network. I start there, So building the network and nurture the relationships, and again show up, because the reason why I want to be the best performer is because I made time for the program. I was available doing all the work that needs to be done. So the enterprise development programs, they work. The networking, any network, any opportunity, I've got business from talking to someone on the plane, and only to find out there are synergies on what I do. The power of network, I just cannot emphasize that enough, that if you are a business person, if you're going to believe that you are introverted and you don't greet people and engage with people and network, you're sabotaging yourself. So that's the development programs, that there are so many here in the country. The networking, LinkedIn is also the best. You get to connect with anybody else. And just to allude to what Moki was saying, that the reason why I'm even sitting on this panel is to be able to open up and network with other women, and engage on robust challenges we're facing, and we're all looking for solutions. So always, as an entrepreneur, respond to all these enterprise development programs. They are well thought, well structured. You will gain something out of it. Power of network and availing yourself, and also just nurture the relationships. The relationship is a two-way stream. If you go and present to a potential customer and you don't follow up and you don't keep those relationships, you're not gonna grow. You say you're not getting any support. And also, even to our male counterparts, reach out to them. Some of them are more than willing to assist and really see us prospering. So so for me, one thing I've been doing now is to be available and taking opportunity of any advert that is out there for potential opportunity within my space. I just put in my application and see. Sometimes I don't even have to know people. I'll network along the lines. Like I'm saying, LinkedIn, once you see the name of the person and inviting them to LinkedIn, you start a conversation. So networking, I cannot emphasize enough that the importance of networking. And also, now that, for instance, I was quite excited about this panel discussion, because it's women, and it's powerhouse women who are doing brilliant initiatives in their own space. Now you establish those kind of relationships. That's where your support system will come from. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mamela. Catherine, you are embedded in an ecosystem of ecosystems, so to speak, that stretches kind of right across Africa. Why are ecosystems so important in supporting female founders? And tell us about network and how you've built your network.
Great, thanks, Charles. So I want to answer this probably in two ways. The first one is we have a terminology in our business called knowledge, networks, funding, and markets. And first, speaking from the business perspective, really as a female founder, you will always be in some phase of those four for your business, right? The knowledge component is one that the knowledge component is much larger in the beginning because you're learning the business of learning the business, and you may know your trade, but you need to learn the business of business. So on a knowledge perspective, I always have the saying, gain as much knowledge as you can out of every interaction. I mean that. When I come onto a panel like this, as an example, or when I am just an audience in a panel, or if I go to a workshop or whatever, I always say, I need to take something out of the session today that I can implement immediately after the session. I'm listening for that. The second one is, I want to hear something that I will absolutely not implement because it won't work for me, but I've learned from it. And the third thing is always, what can I go and do longer term from this session? One person that I want to connect with afterwards, and that is bringing me into the network part from the knowledge perspective. So that's how I build the bridge. Who did I meet in that knowledge session, whatever that session was, that I will ping afterwards to say, hey, I really liked your engagement, or I really liked your comment, or something like that. So that's the knowledge component. The second one is the networks component, and Mamela has said that so beautifully, so I'm not going to add a lot to that. But you will get from the network what you give to the network. It's a two-way street. It's not a one-way street in any form or fashion. And for me, this one was really the hardest one, and that links to your second question, actually, Charles, was working your network authentically, because the authenticity shows or not. Working your network never, ever stops, because as you grow your business, your network will change, and you need to find different people to help you along that journey. So that's network. And in last point on network, I always, what I do from a personal perspective, I always have, every year I review my normal network, and then my personal network, I always say, do I have somebody younger than me that I'm learning from? Do I have somebody much older than me that I'm learning from? Because I want that wisdom from both the young. Do I have a professional in my life that I'm currently learning from? And do I have a spiritual leader that I'm learning from? And sometimes they just go over the years with me, and sometimes they change. But that's the networks part. The last two I'll be very quick on. And I'll leave funding for last, because that's always the most difficult one. The markets. So as you build your business as a founder, and as a female founder, getting market access is difficult, right? And not just as a female founder, as a male founder too, but as a female founder, you just have to push a little bit harder, because you have to show up. And if you just want to show up as yourself, you first got to get through the excuses about, are you dressed okay? And do you look all right? And you're presenting to just an all-male panel, etc., etc. So as you do market access, remember, market access is the best way to fund your business. It's better than taking funding. And Mamela, that's why I so respect your business. And that's why I'm so happy you won the Joburg Prize, because that is really what you've over the years have showed, and what I respect so much. You have clicked on that market access thing. Getting customers is a much easier way in the long run than taking funding from funders, because the funders will want their pound of flesh at the end. So market access is an important one. For every 10 customers, potentially, you may win one. So just accept that and then run with that, right? So that's and then the very final one is the funding bit. So what, from a funding perspective for female founders, the stats show it. We know that when you present to an all-male VC group, as an example, or the stats show it, it's a Harvard Business Review that says, either your investment committee or your group of investors are not balanced, there will be biases. We're all human. We all have biases, right? All of us do. And just make sure that if you do present, understand that you will face some biases. So address those biases up front. So as females, they will ask you, when you ask for funding, So how are you going to get support from your family? How will you balance work-life balance, etc.? Whereas for the males, the VCs who would ask different things like, how are you going to break into more business? How are you going to sell your next? The questions are different. The system is the system. Learn to work within the system. I'm not saying manipulate it. I'm just saying call the biases up front. Then it's just an opening. So I wanted to, sorry, I took that time, Charles, but those 4 things are the most important, really, if female founders can get around those 4.
Hi, Charles. Sorry.
Andrea?
Yeah,
Yes?
no, I'm just saying we've got a couple of questions in the chat, and I've also got a couple of questions from our partners that I'd like to put to the panel. But whenever we're ready to do that.
Let's do it.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, so I'll just go to the chat first. So we've just had some comments. My name is Chebet Florence from Kenya. Africa, I'm excited to be here, learning a lot from you inspiring female founders, especially how best to overcome imposter syndrome and my own personality as a female founder. The tips shared are eye-opening and very helpful. 1 question, 3 short pieces of life advice. I'm just going to go through the questions and then you can kind of answer them. And then, so my takeaway from today is to start networking more and unleash more of my talent. Just a couple of questions which may have been answered already. On Stereotype Alliance, our partner here, Agnes Fury, who's the head of the Stereotype Alliance South Africa chapter, is asking, what would the panel advise young startups as a rule of thumb in a global recession as we're currently experiencing? That's 1 question. Just if you could just take note and then kind of respond to them. We've touched on imposter syndrome. What do you know or have access to now that you wish you knew or had access to at the start of your entrepreneurial journey? So it could be tech innovation or simplified or something that simplified or jump-started your process into entrepreneurship. And you're an inspiration to many, but which African female entrepreneur inspires you? So just a few questions. Those last 3 were from Kantar. Lee Andrews at Kantar, our other partner. So however you want to kind of respond to those, please do. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'd like to bat 1 question to Moki, because Moki was going to go next. I'd like to say, Moki, which female entrepreneur do you most admire and why? And what have you learned from that person?
Okay, well, let me say Monica Musonda, who runs a company called Java Foods. She's based in Zambia. She's also a really good friend. So I actually hear all the challenges. I know what she's been through to build the business from scratch, but that's because I'm close to her. I think there's a ton of women. We've just launched a book called Limitless, which is 21 stories of trailblazing women. And there are half a billion women in Africa. It's really difficult to say. And we know there are more female entrepreneurs in Africa than anywhere else in the world. So it's difficult to pick 1 question. But while I've got the floor, I want to answer the question about advice. Just, somebody asked about 3 pieces of advice. 1 thing I would say to women, have a vision for your business. The last book I wrote, every man that was in there, they had a vision for themselves, for their businesses that was far bigger than their circumstances. That is where it starts. The second thing is learn how to sell. People think, oh, I don't want to sell. I'm not a salesperson. You are selling something every single goddamn day of your life. It's not you, it's your business. It's something. And the third thing I would say is get a coach. If you're really serious about building your business and just expanding and, giving it all you've got, get an executive coach if you can afford it. If you can't, join one of the groups, but have a vision and have a coach. I'll stop there.
Thank you. Mamela, tell me, who is your most admired female founder and what have you learned from that female founder?
Thank you so much, Charlie. For a very long time, because I was exposed to TV and to books, Maya Angelou used to be my role model, and Oprah Winfrey, because that's what I knew. And that's what I was exposed to in terms of media. But it took my mother to pass away in 2020 to realize that actually my role model, someone that I've learned so much from and who really shaped and molded me to be who I am, it's my mother. You know, she was an entrepreneur, she was a philanthropist, and I owe it to her to really bow to her. And also, even with when you look back, how powerful women have been, women that came before us, our ancestors, they really paved the way for us. So I'll always bow to them, but my mother is my really woman role model. And just to answer, may I also answer, Charlie, the question that was asked, that the advice you can give to business. One biggest mistake I was doing, I was passionate and driven, but I was always chasing the numbers versus delivering the service. You know, I'll look on the deal and say, oh, it's so lucrative, there's so much margin out of it, and run after it. It took me years to realize that take a pause and have a vision and follow and stick to your knitting. You know, don't chase money. Money will follow you. If you really develop yourself, you learn and be confident on what you're doing and know it very well and do it exceptionally well as well, then the money follows. So please don't chase the money as an entrepreneur, rather be a servant. Trust me, the money will follow you. Thank you.
Catherine, your favorites or the female founder you admire the most?
Sure.
And kind of top line advice?
Sure. There are probably three. I'll be very brief. Sarah Blakely, who started Spanx. Firstly, she helps with body shape. And secondly, just how she did it out of the back of her car and just got it done. Rebecca Inochong, Cameroonian entrepreneur, absolutely just love her grit, her determination, and how she's gone about things. And then Meg Ford, from Play Sense and Baby Sense, and she was a South African entrepreneur, then moved and just had the opportunity to have supper with her a couple of weeks ago, and how she's exited 2 businesses and just keeping on. So those are 3 of them, but like we said, there's so very many others. And then the second question, I actually wanted to just take one of the questions in the chat. Do you have any advice in terms of overcoming the challenges of competition from big corporates, and especially in the ICT sector? Mamela, you can also add if you need to. My advice here I can give is that really, you will always have competition. I know it's stating water is wet, but the competition will always be there. Just be very clever that you find a niche to start with. Stick to that niche to get the business to build. You will, of course, in the beginning, do anything just to bring in money. We understand that. So I'm not talking the first 2 or so years, but I'm talking after that. That year 3 to year 5 is the really difficult time, because you are needing to sell to get customers whilst you have this continuous competition, and you're still sorting out what is the true value proposition of your business and your product. So my advice would be, if you are only in the space of competing against big corporates, if you're in countries where there are programs like Mamela spoke about, enterprise development programs, because there's an incentive for the corporate to actually bring you into the supply chain, etc., etc. It's a whole topic on its own, but just in conclusion, there will always be competition. So find a small bit and try and see where you can work with them sometimes to eventually get business. But don't focus on the competition, focus on what you do best. It's a completely different lens.
Thanks so much, Catherine. I'm going to chip in here and say that my most admired female founder is Rapalang Rabana. And I love Rapalang Rabana because she has an incredible story, and her family escaped generational poverty. Her mother and father made a conscious decision to invest in academia for themselves and for their children. Rapalang, right from a fairly early age at school, was very mindful and kind of really understood herself and what she wanted from life, and it created kind of like a growth mindset that propelled her. And by the time she was 25, she had created a voice over IP company and become a millionaire. Yeah. So, I mean, like really, really pragmatic, the pragmatic fruits of knowing yourself and kind of investing in yourself and investing in education for yourself can yield the most incredible rewards. And then kind of my advice would be to ruthlessly be yourself. I don't identify as women. Women, I'm gender non-binary. Yeah. But women and people who are gender non-binary or who are not kind of, fit those easy binary categories often have a lot of challenges. And the more you know yourself and the more you know your business, the greater you will grow your confidence. Yeah. And then walk into fear. Fear is a thing that can kind of make you feel very small and kind of contracted and that sort of thing. Our jobs is to walk into that. Fear in the boardroom, fear of telling your story, fear of stepping up to the plate, the fear of being who and what you are. Whatever fear you feel that relates to yourself and to your business, walk relentlessly into it and exorcise those voices that are not yours because they come from school and they come from your parents and they come from society and they come from things around you. And if they're keeping you small, do the work of exercising them from you. If it's yoga, if it is therapy, if it is, whatever system you use, to better yourself, relentlessly invest in yourself and invest in growing yourself and believing that you're worth it. Yeah. Andrea, any more questions?
No, I think all of those responses were perfect. We're kind of running a bit over time, but so I just want to kind of wrap up. We have what I may do is I'll pick up any other questions on, if there are any other questions, and maybe message you guys, and if you're happy to respond to them, then we can do that. But I just wanted to just kind of wrap up. It's amazing. I've been with Women in Marketing for 18 years this year, and every time we have these conversations, I get so much out of it, and it's just I'm really appreciative for you guys for giving your time and sharing what you know, and I'm learning every single day, every single time we do one of these. So just want to say thank you. Just a few points that I've really kind of picked up on. So you touched on in dealing with imposter syndrome. Just be brave. The first couple of hours or an hour or so of the day is yours. Make the most of it, really, to have those rituals in place. What Moki said at the beginning, if your business can't afford you, get a job that can, which is really important when you're starting out. Understand why you're at the table. Understand your value, what knowledge you bring. Understanding that will give you the confidence to talk about whatever you're brought there to talk about. Show up, work hard, and walk into fear, which is amazing. So thank you so much, Catherine, Mamela, Moki, who's had to drop off now, and obviously Charles for kind of moderating and guiding the discussion. Really appreciate your support and your time. Also, thank you to our partners, Kantar and Stereotype Alliance, and of course, Think Africa. Just like to say that these series of conversations will continue this year. In September, we're planning to do one focused on senior executives in advertising and creative agencies. And then, God willing, in November, we'll do one particularly focusing on men and how their perceptions and their thoughts around gender issues in the workplace. So, just look out for information on that. Please do connect with me on LinkedIn, Andrea Jan Crofer. Send me a message, and then I'll make sure you'll get that information. But yeah, great. Thank you so much, and we'll leave it there. Have a great afternoon, and brilliant. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you all. All right. Bye-bye.